Hello and welcome to Crimewatch. One man's desperation to stop on the motorway in a few minutes. We start though with someone who got out of a car without a worry in the world, but within moments she was killed by what increasingly looks like a serial attacker.
Sally Ann Bowman had a career as a model ahead of her. She was just 18. In the early hours of week last Sunday, Sally Ann sat talking in her ex-boyfriend's car practically outside her home in Croydon. They'd been out earlier at a local club. Here's Sally Ann coming into Lloyd's, a bar in Croydon town centre, late on the Saturday night. She buys drinks at the bar and talks to friends. She leaves with her sister around 1 a.m. to go to a friend's house. And this is Sally Ann in the outfit she was wearing that night. At 2 in the morning, she comes back into Croydon in a cab. Around 20 minutes later, her ex-boyfriend picks her up and drives her home to Blenheim Crescent. They chat for a good hour and a half before he drives away at 4:15 in the morning. Sally Ann walked just a few steps from the car before confronting her killer. Well, Danielle and Nicole, Sally Ann's sisters, are here, and DCI Stuart Cundy. Danielle, you were with Sally Ann earlier that night, weren't you? Because you dropped her off in Croydon for a night out. I presume she was just looking forward to a good time.
She was, certainly. She couldn't wait to go home, get ready and choose her outfit for the evening ahead of her.
And she was just 18. She had a whole life ahead of her. She had the whole world ahead of her.
Sally was the best sister, daughter and aunt you could possibly wish for. She was a beautiful young woman inside and out, and she was just like any other typical teenager. She was flighty and loved to sing, dance and entertain, and we all miss her. We miss her dearly.
Now, Stuart, the man who did this, you know quite a bit about him now because he's been linked to other attacks before, hasn't he?
Yes, he has, yeah. I know from DNA forensic evidence that he committed an indecent assault in 2001. Now, that's 4 years before he murdered Sally Ann.
But it was in the same area, wasn't it? That's crucial. That's
right. It's about a mile away in Purley Cross area, about a mile from where Sally Ann was found in Blenheim Crescent.
And then he's been linked to another attack earlier on that night, the night Sally Ann was killed. That's
right. Sally Ann was killed. It's the early hours of Sunday, 25th of September. An attack on another woman happened less than an hour before Sally Ann was murdered. That's about 3:20 to 4 in the morning. It was a robbery. Similar sort of property was taken in that attack. It's a very similar description of the man who I believe is responsible.
Because that's one of the key things. You've been able to get a description now of what this man looks like,
yes,
the kind of build
right.
he has.
Yes. The victim of that robbery has been able to provide with an excellent description of the suspect. Indeed, an EFIT has been produced, plus a witness who saw who I believe is the same man in Blenheim Crescent very soon after a scream was heard. And I believe it's the same man that's responsible for both attacks in a very short space of time.
He's certainly very striking features when you look at him. I mean, one thing that struck me when I was there yesterday was from Sally Ann getting out of the car to getting to her front door, to getting where she was murdered. It's just a dozen steps. I mean, it's very like this guy was hanging around waiting for her, isn't it?
I think there's a very high chance that he was waiting. Where he was waiting, I don't know, but I think someone might have seen him and not realised how significant that was.
In terms of his modus operandi, he has kept items from Sally Ann. When he attacked the woman earlier on, he took items from her. He kept those. You haven't found them.
No.
And the items Sally Ann. Now talk us through these things that are still missing, Stuart.
Yeah, Danielle and Nicole have helped us immensely. Sally Ann had a white Prada handbag, identical to this handbag, but with the badge that wasn't on it but would have been inside. In there would have been a passport and also a black Samsung mobile phone like the one on the table. We're also missing a white crochet bolero style cardigan, similar to the one here, but a little bit shorter, more up around the midriff. None of those items have been found, and that's despite a lot of appeals to members of the public in the area. There is a strong possibility that the person responsible still has these. And similar items were also taken from the victim of the robbery less than an hour before.
Now, if he committed one assault back in 2001, and then now we have, of course, the murder of Sally Ann, it's certainly possible that he has attacked other women in that time, or he may have been in prison, but it's possible that other women may have been assaulted by him. You'd like to hear from them tonight, wouldn't you?
I would, and I'd urge anybody who has been the victim of a sexual attack, that can be an assault, it can be being followed, being flashed at, in the South Croydon or Purley area.
Because that's crucial, is it? It's in that local area. That's the information you want.
That's right, it's in that area. The two attacks that are linked and the robbery that I believe is linked are all in that area. Now, those women may have some important information that could assist us. The sooner this dangerous person is taken off the street, the better it is for all women in that area.
I mean, it's possible he may have a girlfriend, he may be married. Someone will know this person, won't they?
That's right. The victim of the robbery said to us that the man who attacked her was good looking. Now, she said, and I believe, that it's a very strong chance he has got a partner or a girlfriend, and I'd appeal, if you have a suspicion about someone you know, please contact us. Contact the Instant Room or Crime Stoppers. If it isn't that person, I can eliminate them very quickly.
You've got DNA, you can rule them out.
I have DNA evidence, I can very quickly eliminate them from the inquiry. Please contact us. Someone knows who this individual is, and I'd ask them to contact us.
Okay, well, Danielle and Nicole and Stuart, thank you all very much. Call us here in the studio or the incident room on 020 8721 4005. Or if you want to, you can call Crime Stoppers anonymously on 0800 555 111. And you can now text us as well. The number's 83199. Begin your text with the letters CW for Crimewatch and then your message.
Autumn's drawing in, the nights are getting shorter, but think back to the heat of summer. On one of those sunny weekends in June, a man in Stockport couldn't stick the heat anymore, so he drove to a local market to buy an electric fan. But things were about to get a whole lot hotter. A scrapyard in Kent. The end of the road for a burnt-out VW Golf. Its last journey took it almost the length of England, but its owner wasn't in the driving seat. He'd been left for dead. Two men with a gun had taken the wheel 300 miles back. Sunday morning, an almost deserted Stockport market. These two men were about to put someone through the worst hour of his life.
As I was walking to the market, I noticed two men standing around. And the market was actually closed that day. So I turned around and I went back to my car. One of them was in the back with me.
Where's your money?
Shouting at me and hitting me.
Stay down!
And I just didn't know what they were going to do.
How much money's on this card? How much money have you?
1,000. We went over a few speed bumps and I couldn't really tell where we were going. It went on for about 20 to 30 minutes and I think we came to a petrol station. I carried on driving and I still didn't know where we were.
Stay down, eh?
It was very frightening because I didn't know what was going to happen. It took me 2 to 3 minutes to untie the ropes on my hand. I could feel that the car was moving a lot faster. I called 999 on my phone. I thought they could maybe trace my number.
In desperation, he then called a friend.
喂？你说什么？
I thought I have to get away from them. If I didn't try, I would be just sitting in the boot waiting for who knows what might happen.
Hey, he's coming out! Stop him! Stop him, man! Stop him! Hold his hand! Get back in the boot! Fuck! You there? What's that? He's outside the car!
I broke my collarbone and I was scratched all over and bleeding quite badly. But at least I had gotten away from them.
It was just as well they were on the hard shoulder or he would have been killed. And actually, it's frightening to think what they would have done to him if he hadn't escaped. What were they doing in Cheshire? The car finished up in London. Do you think they came from the northwest or are these Londoners?
No, I'm satisfied that there will be people from the London area, probably the northwest of London.
So how did they get up to Cheshire? They obviously didn't have wheels to get back down again.
That we haven't completely solved at this stage. We're quite happy they haven't come up by train. We've checked the train systems, we've checked the CCTV in the town.
So maybe they were doing a deal or something up there. You say they come from northwest London, you think why?
Primarily because when they've obviously returned to that area and a number of offences have been committed in the London area. There's several of those. The first one is a driver from a petrol station which occurred the same evening about 8 o'clock in the Hounslow area, and approximately 3 days later on Wednesday the 29th of June there was a robbery in the Harrow area.
We've got a bit of CCTV of that, and you see a guy who's running away. You'll see him just in a moment, comes streaking across. There's someone in hot pursuit of them. You haven't got a lot on these guys, really, except that they're fairly tall, sort of 6'1", maybe a bit more, the others 5'10". Until tonight, at least, they've had short beards.
Yes, that's correct.
And obviously very, very, very dangerous people indeed. One of them with a black handgun. Please call us here if there's any way you can tell us more about these guys. I wouldn't want to be friends with them. They look like pretty dangerous characters. Our number's always on the screen, or you can try the instant room on 0161 856 9845.
Yeah, well, let's hope we get a result on this too.
Nasty people.
We certainly have got a result to report from last month's Crimewatch. Robert Sharp was sent on to work placement from Ford Open Prison in Sussex to a charity shop nearby. 6 weeks into the job, his colleague was threatened with a knife and £350 was stolen. Sharp saw himself on Crimewatch. He was in bed in a hospital in London where he was recovering from a heart bypass operation. He escaped from the hospital but had to come back the next day in an ambulance. Staff there contacted police and Sharp's now in Brixton Prison.
Last month also we featured a suspected drug rape in Hammersmith in West London. If you remember, the victim went out for a drink with a friend, but she ended up in a strange flat with a strange, at least an unknown man. Now the police had been unable to find her friend since the attack, which was fairly crucial because she might have known the men. But it turns out that night she too was watching Crimewatch and she is now in touch with the officers. And another viewer recognised the attacker's tattoos and called in naming an Australian man. He lived locally at the time, but Australian police are now being called in to help find him.
We showed Habib Khan's face on the programme in June. He's suspected of being a major drug dealer. Calls into Crimewatch suggested he was out of the country, and Khan was actually arrested on his return at Manchester Airport in August. He's been charged with conspiracy to supply heroin.
In February this year, we showed CCTV of a man using a stolen credit card to get money from a bank in Weybridge in Surrey. Anthony McCallum was identified by a police employee who was watching Crimewatch. McCallum was arrested, he's pleaded guilty, he's now been sentenced to 12 months.
Tracy Cullen was waiting for a bus home in Colmore Row in Birmingham on the night of Live 8, that's July the 2nd. She was with her 12-year-old son Ashley and 3 other children. Some teenagers in the queue tried to push their way to the front. Tracy told one of them off and she told them what she thought of them and got punched for her trouble. She fell to the pavement, breaking her ankle. That injury led to a blood clot, which killed her 6 weeks later. Mark Holliday, her partner, is here, as is DCI Jan Thomas West. Mark, I mean, Tracy had a bit of a go at these teenagers because they pushed their way to the front. That's the kind of woman she was, wasn't it? She wouldn't stand back if she saw someone doing something wrong.
Yeah, that's right. She, especially if her son was involved, she would just speak out. She was a sort of, as part of her personality. She sort of had a sort of loud northern personality, and she just, you know, she'd stand up for her rights, basically.
Jan, what do you know about the one person in that group that threw that punch?
We know from the description given that he's a dark-skinned black male, aged between 17 to 20 years. He's clean-shaven, he's about 6 foot tall, slim build, and he's described as having shaved, short sideburns.
Now, he's wearing a jacket like this.
That's
the
correct.
distinctive thing about this is it's what's called a Mackenzie top, is it? It's a Mackenzie brand. Here's the back of it.
That's it, that's correct. We know that that was from autumn 2004 and they are no longer available for sale. Every single one has been sold. It is unique and we know that the offender was wearing that jacket on that evening.
Now, the teenager who threw this punch was with a group of other mates. It's possible they may have no idea what happened to Tracy after that punch was thrown.
Well, clearly, she died 6 weeks after the assault, and I do believe that they would never have realised the consequences of their actions. And I would appeal for them to come forward.
This is the time for them to come forward now.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, I am treating the death as suspicious, and I would ask him and his friends and anybody who know who they are to come forward and let us know.
And of course, it was Live 8 tonight that night, so there must have been a lot of people milling around. There was a big screen up in Birmingham, wasn't there? A lot of people must have seen what went on.
That's right. The Colmore Row is one of the main thoroughfares in and out of Birmingham. There are a number of bus stops, and Tracy was waiting at the number 29 bus stop. A screen was in Victoria Square in Birmingham on that night, and we know from our inquiries that there were dozens of people in and around that area at the time of the attack.
Well, call us here. The number's always on the screen, or try the instant room on 0121 626 6198. And if you've been a victim of crime, you can call Victim Support on 0845 30 30 900.
Later on Crimewatch, the wedding day that couldn't have gone better for the bride and groom. But left one of the guests wondering how to put her life back together. Now, 20 years ago, the Conservative Party ran the country. Mullet haircuts weren't a joke, and Live Aid at Wembley thrilled the world for the first time. But for a teenager in South Wales, that summer of '85 will always be remembered with grief and pain. Her mother was murdered, and by a killer was happy to see others pay for what he'd done.
Things have changed, obviously. The town itself and my feelings towards the town have changed.
Hairstyles have changed too. In 1985, a perm was cutting-edge fashion in Swansea for both teenager and mum. But Elizabeth was about to lose her mother in a murder that shocked, then haunted South Wales. Elizabeth moved away from Swansea, but now she's back to meet detectives who, 20 years on, are looking again for her mother's killer.
It's bringing up a lot of memories and things that I thought were over and done with, but if at the end of the day I find out who was responsible, then it will be worth it for peace of mind.
Good morning, this is Swansea Sound on Friday the 14th of June.
It's just a normal school morning, the usual rushes to get ready. In her case, work, me, school.
Elizabeth's mum, Sandra Phillips, took a job as manageress at this sex shop in Swansea town centre. Behind the blacked-out windows, it sold pornography and erotic toys and clothes.
She worked in the private shop in Dilwyn Street, and it would appear that she worked in the shop because, like any other working parent, she needed money to put food on the table and provide for her family.
She just saw it as a job. It wasn't anything to be embarrassed by. We just used to laugh more than anything about it, so.
But though she might have joked in front of her children, by the summer of 1985, just a few weeks into the job, Sandra was having misgivings. She told her husband about some disturbing customers.
One male in particular masturbated in front of Sandra, and there had been other instances where people had gone in and exposed. And she worked there by herself, long hours as well. So yeah, she was vulnerable.
On that Friday morning, the 14th of June, 4 people tried to phone the shop, but Sandra didn't answer.
The area manager is trying to make contact with Sandra and can't get any reply, which then leads to Mr. Williams arriving in Swansea, finding the front door partially locked. The practice amongst the staff was that if they had gone out to get some food or whatever, they would leave a sign on the door saying back in 2 minutes. That sign wasn't on there. So his initial reaction of Mr. Williams was of annoyance. You know, why isn't this shop open? It's a trading day. He used his set of keys and gained entry. He was met with a sight of very much just the shop as it normally is. In the middle of the floor of the shop was a garment, a basque, predominantly red with black trim. That was a product for sale in the shop. Why that garment was in the floor at the moment, I'm not clear about. There was a strong smell of petrol. And then, unfortunately, he sighted the body of Sandra Phillips.
Sandra's tights had been ripped down, she'd been battered to death. She was 38 years old.
Sandra had been subject to a vicious and violent attack. Multiple injuries, primarily to the head. There's signs of strangulation, and there's also marks to her body. Still 20 years on, looking at the pictures, I'm still shocked at the severity of the beating.
Word soon spread around the town and a crowd began to gather. 14-year-old Elizabeth was unaware of all the commotion.
We came in from playing, and then I can remember that I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was an atmosphere. My uncle told me that my mum had been killed. I just didn't believe him at first, and I said I don't think it really sank in for a good while afterwards.
2 men in those crowds in Dilwyn Street caught the attention of police. Brothers Wayne and Paul Darvell had both been known to visit the sex shop and were often seen sitting on a grassy bank opposite. Within 24 hours, they'd been arrested.
Wayne Darvell made a confession to interviewing police officers. Wayne, in essence, said that both of them had been involved in the incident. Now, Paul never made any admissions. Subsequently, both Wayne and Paul faced trial.
To say we were happy is the wrong choice of words, but it was a relief. And we thought that we'd sort of put it all to rest then, and it would be the end of it.
Wayne and Paul Darvell were convicted and sentenced to life. But the case would soon become notorious. The fact is, they didn't do it.
You had a few years that you believed it was over, and then somebody suddenly says it might not be.
Doubts about the Darvell's guilt came to a head in 1988 with the BBC's Rough Justice programme. The biggest concern was that the prosecution rested on Wayne's confession. He made that confession with no solicitor there to advise him. What's more, Wayne had a reputation for admitting to things he hadn't done.
There are questions to be asked, however inconvenient, about the conviction of the brothers. For those reasons, we and Justice will be sending a file on Wayne and Paul Darvell to the Home Office. Good night.
Two brothers convicted of murdering a sex shop manageress in 1985 have been cleared and freed by the Court of Appeal.
The brothers thanked their family, the BBC programme Rough Justice, which helped reopen the case, and the
6 years imprisonment for a crime he didn't commit took their toll on Paul Darvell. He lost all his hair and 3 stones in weight.
Because I was so young, I didn't know, in a sense, who to blame, if anybody was to blame. We were back, if you like, to square one, where we didn't know, again, who'd done it.
"20 years after Sandra was murdered, her violent killer is still at large, and the investigation has been revived. The private shop is still in business, though some of the layout has changed. This summer, the police literally tore down the walls to get to the truth. Behind the old panelling, they found 9 sets of fingerprints. One of them could well be the killer's.
We had to understand the fingerprints. It's very easy to say fingerprints were in the premises, but actually my question is, why were your fingerprints in that location? And I've basically started the investigation again. In essence, I'm looking at every technique we can to be able to sit down to the family and say, we're doing the best by you.
Elizabeth is Superintendent Clark. Hi. Simon Clark, Superintendent. Thanks for coming down today.
People say to me, how are you going to do this 20 years down the line? It's been done in the past, it will be done in the future. There are people out there who know who did this.
Going over a lot of things that, in a sense, I have buried. I don't talk about them a lot.
There will be times
The best evidence still comes from the private shop itself. This is how it looks today, but 20 years on, original footage of the crime scene is still intact.
Behind the counter was a payphone. The handset had been removed. It seemed that the person responsible for the killing had taken the handset. That phone handset has never been recovered.
Sandra had a Williams & Glynn checkbook and card. The killer took the card, but left the checkbook. Why? 20 years ago, one was useless without the other.
The most significant thing that's never been recovered are her keys. The front door of the private shop was locked, and therefore it seemed right to assume that the person responsible for the killing has taken the keys, gone outside and locked the door.
Was it a sex attack? Remember, her clothing had been disturbed, but Sandra wasn't raped.
I think it's a fair assumption to make at this time that there was a sexual motive to this. Did somebody who attended that premise think that because she worked in a shop like that she was an easy target, or that she offered services that she quite clearly did not?
And why was petrol splashed around, then not set on fire?
Why didn't they do that? Where did they get the petrol from? Did they bring the petrol there? I think Sandra was alive until about 11 o'clock that morning. And I think at about 11 o'clock she was killed. I say that based on the last action on the till.
There were 2 men seen outside the shop around the time of the murder that police still need to trace.
At about 11 o'clock that morning, a man described as being of portly build, white, about 35 years of age, was seen to leave the shop. He was wearing a Trilby-style hat and was also seen to carry a brown package like this. At 11:15, 11:20 that morning, a witness saw a man leaving the shop, and he's described at the front door as if he is locking it. This man is described as being in his late 50s. Today he would be in his 70s.
This is what we're left with.
I miss is that I've never been able to speak to her as an adult, be it about just advice on bringing up my own son or general chit-chat, just pick up the phone to say how are you and what are you doing today sort of thing, and those are the things that I miss most.
You know, I would dearly love to be able to sit with you one day and tell you exactly what I think happened. We're not there yet, but I'm sure we will get to that point. If there's something you don't want to talk about, until I've exhausted every line of inquiry and done it again and checked and reassured myself there's nothing more my staff and myself can do, I won't rest.
In fact, one of Britain's best-known detectives was brought out of retirement to help review the case and what had gone wrong with the original inquiry, Albert Kirby. And the Darvell wrong conviction really clouded the whole thing. But supposing you'd been in charge of that investigation in 1985, Crimewatch was recently on the air, you were on the programme then, what would you have appealed about?
Simon Clark's identified this man seen leaving at about 11:15, locking the door. He has got to be the main emphasis. And what I would say to you viewers are, who do you know who fits that description in 1985? Probably about 70 years of age now. Who could have uncontrolled anger one minute and very controlled and calm the next? Who
you mean calm enough to then go out and lock the door rather than run away afterwards?
Exactly, yeah. And who do you recall that individual having blood on their clothing, coming in with this very, very strong smell of petrol on their clothing? And as you say, having that composure to lock the door after they've done a brutal murder and then walk away apparently as if nothing has happened.
And presumably come by car, because where did he get the petrol from? I mean, it wasn't seen bringing petrol to the shop, there wasn't petrol in the shop.
I think that's an added factor with it, that they probably had access to petrol at the spur of the moment. They wouldn't have gone, I don't think, to a garage and bought petrol and then come back again. They probably had ready access to it.
He went off with the keys after he'd locked the shop. This is a replica of the key fob. It's a Royal Marines key fob, and that's never really turned up. I'm not sure he'd have kept this. You wanted to trace, you were telling me earlier, everybody who ever went to that sex shop in 1984, 1985. They might be rather reluctant to come forward.
It was no big deal, was it, to go to a shop like that, certainly in today's climate. But what I would say, if you went there, if you know any information, and bearing in mind that the inquiry team now are making really positive lines in looking at fingerprint examination, forensic analysis, pathology analysis, for goodness sake, if you were there, if you fit that type of bill, or you know anyone, come and see us before that policeman comes knocking on your door. And all I would say to anyone, if they've got any doubts, just remember what Elizabeth Gray said. She wants peace of mind. She's brought up her own family, as her brothers have, and they've never had a mother to turn to.
Well, give us the name. They've got the evidence to convict if you can help us. And remember the personality. You married to him, were you? Someone in Swansea at the time, very violent, one minute, could be quite controlled. Call us here. The number is always on the screen for the studio. You can try the instant room on this case is 01792 555 576.
Time to catch up with Criminals Caught on Camera now with Detective Constable Rav Wilding.
And this month we've got some very dodgy double acts. First, two betting shop burglars in Sheffield city centre. They're not interested in horse racing, they've got their own hurdle to jump, the Ladbrokes counter. One of them punches the manager and threatens to kill him unless he hands over the cash. They then make off with £2,500. Can you shorten the odds on finding them? Now the Weatherby 2. Look first at the crook in the cap. He drops some loose change and forces the man behind him off of the bus and into the hands of his sidekick, who then relieves him of £200. The confused victim gets back on the bus, followed by the thief, who then has a few words with the driver before making himself scarce. Who are these pickpockets? This pair are in a closed car park in Newcastle's Green Market, but they don't pay and display, they break and enter. After stealing a cash bag, they try and open the ticket machines. But as well as a crowbar, this fella's gone equipped with a duffel coat, and it's clearly hot work. They steal around £1,800 in cash and cause £14,000 worth of damage. They reckon they're safe in the stairwell, but they've been caught on the job. Who are they? Finally, we're back on the buses with a man on his own. At least he would be if he stopped assaulting girls. He's assaulted the same teenage girl 3 times on 3 different buses around Wimbledon. He sits himself down behind her, but as soon as he can, he slips into the seat next to her and puts his hand up her skirt. He won't stop doing this till we get him stopped. Who is he? If you know the man on the bus or any of those burglars and thieves, tell us. The number's on your screen.
Yes, we have the numbers 0500 600 600 and use it if you know any of the gang caught on an extraordinary CCTV sequence in Southwark in London 7 weeks ago. They clearly knew what they were looking for. They weren't just after office computers, but the company's server and other hardware, about £250,000 worth. It happened on the 11th of August, and these are the men on a recce a week before the heist. They wander around as if they own the place, or certainly as if they work there. Back they come 4 days later, the 15th of August, capped and wigged for the robbery. Then they load up a van just outside with the servers and computer switches. They're warding off a rather bemused security guard who suspects they're up to no good. And then off they go. They drive straight through the security barrier, look, crash through it, and they're away. We've got quite a good view of them. 3 white men, about 6 foot, 25 to 30, all with brown hair. Do you recognise any of them? And in total, they stole 18 servers, 2 switches. The servers are Sunfire V240s, and the computer switches are Cisco's. And you can look up the serial numbers, so you can check them out in detail on our website from tomorrow. So has anyone tried to sell you any of that lot? Call us in the studio.
Now, Detective Constables Rav Wilding and Jackie Hames have some wanted faces that they'd like you to put some names to.
And we start with another constable. Staffordshire PC, Dave Smith, was attacked when he went to check on a suspicious-looking car outside the St George pub in Tamworth last July. 22-year-old Thomas Piopasana is wanted in relation to the attack. He's 5'11", has blue eyes and a scar on his upper right cheek. PC Smith still hasn't been able to return to work.
Zahir Gujar was charged with sexual offences against a woman with mental health disorder, but jumped bail in April this year. He's from Reading and was working as a supermarket assistant. He also has links to the Midlands.
DNA evidence links Norman Hitchens to an armed robbery on a 51-year-old man last November. The victim was treasurer of a local social club. He was hit with a hammer by Hitchens outside a bank in Sellyoak in Birmingham. Hitchens grabbed several £1,000s in club takings and escaped. The Met are also after him for violent offences, so please don't approach him yourself.
And Alexander Hamish Brown has been on the run for 2 years now. He failed to appear in court to face charges of supplying heroin, cocaine and ecstasy on Merseyside. He has links in Scotland and Blackpool. If you recognise any of those faces, call us here in the studio.
Now an appeal to one viewer in particular, but it could hardly be more important. It's about whether a teenage sailor was the victim of a serial killer operating in the ranks of the Royal Navy. 19 years ago, Simon Parkes was rating on board HMS Illustrious. In December 1986, the ship docked in Gibraltar and Simon and some shipmates went ashore for the night. Simon never returned. There was a search of the island, failed to find him, and it failed to find out what had happened to him. Then this summer, a BBC documentary looked at Simon's connection to Petty Officer Alan Grimson. They both served on HMS Illustrious together. They were seen together in Gibraltar on that night. Grimson later confessed to the murders of 2 young men. They were killed in the late 1990s, but both on the same date that Simon disappeared all those years before. That was on December the 12th. Grimson has categorically denied being involved in Simon's disappearance. But after the programme, a viewer rang the BBC's confidential action line. And there's something very important police want to ask that viewer, and hence this appeal tonight. Please, if that was you, call again. I can't emphasise this enough. What they want to ask and what you have to say really is crucially important. Now, of course, we also want to hear from anybody else who can tell us more about the case. The incident room number is 02 392 899 899.
Mid-June in Southampton, a sunny Saturday. The bride and groom are looking their best. It's a great day for a wedding, but one that will haunt one of the guests for a very long time.
was an old university friend who I've only seen once in the last 10 years, and I got an invitation to his wedding, which was a really nice surprise. So we thought, right, let's make a weekend of it. Booked a nice hotel, and we were looking forward to spending a day in Southampton, followed by a good fun in the evening at the wedding, seeing some old friends and going on from there.
Ladies and gentlemen, the bride and groom.
I was a little bit nervous with not knowing anybody, but I was quite excited because it would be the first wedding that my boyfriend and I had been to, and I hadn't met any of his university friends, and it would be an opportunity for me to meet some new people.
Hello, mate. It's good to see you.
So glad you could come.
You're looking absolutely wonderful, darling. Can I do the honours? Yeah, this is Mike. Mike.
Hi,
Vicky.
nice to meet
Vicky. Nice to meet you, lass.
Nice to meet you.
And of course, this is Sarah.
I'm going to go to the toilet. Do you want to get some more drinks in?
All right, I'll go. Hello, mate. Do you want another one? No. You not managed to kick that yet? No, mate. Do you know, I'll tell you, it's times like this I could kill for a fag. Well, I got one if you want one. I got a box full. Go on then, look. Just come over here. Under the fun? No, mate, it's Vicky, she hates it. Cheers. All right? Yeah, please. Yeah. I love it. See, I told you you love it. Whoa, caught on the accent.
What are you doing?
Just having a cigarette, babe.
But you promised. No.
What? I'm just having one with my friend on his special day, that's all.
Just the one?
Yeah, just the one.
It never stops at one, does it?
Look, I'm not smoking again, am I? It's just one cigarette, for old time's sake. Hey? Okay? Yeah.
We decided to leave probably just after 12:20, but by the time we'd said our goodbyes and finally left, it was about past. And we needed to walk back through a park because that was the only route that we knew back to the hotel. It was the route that we'd taken to get to the wedding in the afternoon, so that was the only way we knew to get back.
You had a good time?
Yeah. That wasn't until you had a cigarette.
Oh, babe, look. It's not like I'm smoking 20 a day again or something. It was just one cigarette with a few drinks.
That's not the point.
Look, there it is. I told you it was only a few minutes.
Don't change the subject. You always do that.
Look, I've said sorry. I don't know what else to say. I had a few drinks and I fancied a cigarette. It's not the end of the world.
We got to within sight of the hotel. We're about 20 yards away from the edge of the park, and I think the argument peaked then.
It's not just the cigarette, it's the fact that you stood behind a pillar acting like some naughty schoolboy.
Just give it a rest, will you?
Don't tell me to give it a rest.
I've had enough of this.
And I just said, right, I've had enough, and just walked off quite quickly.
You've done it now.
Sit down.
As he dragged me under the tree, he turned me around and he pushed me to the ground, and it was at that point I realised that his intention was to rape me.
You don't have to do this, I won't tell anybody.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up, I've got a knife!
All the time I wanted to scream, but I really, really thought he was going to kill me. I had to put my fingers in my mouth to stop myself screaming. My thoughts at that stage were just to stay alive, hope he would just do what he had to do and go.
Don't go yet.
I wanted to get out of that park as quickly as I could. I wanted to get to somewhere where I was safe, but because he'd said to me that I wasn't to go yet, I needed to make sure he'd gone. The minute that I felt it was all right to go, I just became hysterical, and really as I got from under the tree I was hysterical. I felt sick, I felt frightened and terrified because what had happened then became much more real to me.
What's happened? I've been raped.
Yeah, take a seat.
This is the area where the attack happened. Behind me, the path where the woman was grabbed, and to the right here, the tree where she was assaulted. You can also see in the background there the hotel where the couple was staying, and the extremely short distance that she would have had to travel to safety. This is the tree where it happened. Although it's been cut right back since, at the time, these branches would have been right down onto the floor, and it actually meant that once the man had pushed this woman inside, it was a very dark den and out of view of anybody walking past. It's a very busy city centre park, and there must have been people that were walking past at the time who may have thought it was just an ordinary couple. These are the people that we need to trace, speak to, and see if they heard or saw anything which may be able to help. It's frightening to think that this man struck just seconds after the couple had split. We don't know where he's from, but he certainly had a good knowledge of this area of the park. He planned his attack well, and he took the opportunity when it arose. If it wasn't that woman, I think it would have been somebody else that night. And it's for these reasons that he's an exceptionally dangerous person, and we need to find him as soon as possible.
D.I. John Gunner, when you look at the e-fit of that rapist, he looks Mediterranean, maybe Eastern European, but he could just as well be British, couldn't he?
Yes, you're right, but I must point out that the e-fit is just a guide. I mean, the skin tone could just be the fact that he's very suntanned rather than an indicator of his nationality. But what we do know about him is that he is aged in his mid to late 30s, he is medium to athletic build, and he has very short dark hair. We also know that he displayed a very good knowledge of at the time, which does tend to suggest a connection with Southampton. Now this, I think, is the key, a connection with Southampton. It may be because he works there, lives there, goes to university there, or is just a regular visitor, but I feel sure that he has some sort of connection to the scene. So if anybody knows who this man is, then I'll ask them to phone him.
Now you've got DNA, so if people do call in, you can easily eliminate innocent people from your inquiry. We saw the reconstruction there. Although it was late at night, there were quite a few people walking through the park. There must be witnesses who
Absolutely
saw.
Right, yes. We're looking for people who were in the park at that time. Somebody, like you say, must have seen this man hanging around. Also, with an attack of this nature, I feel sure that this isn't this man's first offence. So if there are any women out there who feel that they have been attacked by this chap before, then I'll encourage them to phone us.
Okay, well, remember it was between 10 to 1 and 1 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, the 19th of June, East Park, Southampton. Call us here, the number's always on the screen, or try the instant room on 01962 871 555.
Now a rape, worse than that, a gang rape in Blackpool. We need your help to find 3 people who took part. We don't know exactly who they are. We even have their photographs. What we don't know is where they are, particularly where they are tonight. They're wanted for a terrible attack on a schoolgirl, a 15-year-old. All the 3 were born in Iraq. They're all Kurdish. They're all in their 20s. There's Faridun Karim, who's 5'10". The other 2 are much shorter. There's Abdullah Tana, who's 5'5", and Zana Salihana, who's 5'6". And this is Andy Webster, the DI, who's in charge of the case. Tell us what happened. This is earlier in the year, back in May. What happened?
Yeah, that's right. The victim was on the promenade at Blackpool, and she's gone to a burger bar there to ask to use the toilet. And one of the men working there, a man we believe called Taha, has used his mobile phone and contacted friends. A car's come along and they've told her that they'll take her to a toilet, where in fact they've taken her to a local house, and there she's been raped.
Now all these 3 have subsequently disappeared. They all worked in fast food outlets, and that's presumably where they'll be working now, is it?
Yeah, what we like to do is to appeal to people who may go to these fast food outlets, and they might recognise that they've got new members of staff since May, and they might know these people by their first names, by one of their names, and would ask them to come forward and contact us.
So you're talking about customers going to fast food places, and presumably to Kurdish community, Kurdish speakers, because these guys had all been in the country quite a short time, and although they spoke some English, they'd be more familiar with Kurdish.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they've left Blackpool after the incident, and I'm sure that they've been in contact with other Kurds in the country, and what we'd like to do is to ask them to contact us if they've got details of the whereabouts. And they may not know that the police wish to speak to them, and they may not know what they've done in Blackpool, but we'd like to speak to them as soon as possible, and if they've got information about that, to come forward and contact us.
Okay, I mean, it was a hideous case, this, and we've got these 3 really, really good photographs. The victim was only 15, a schoolgirl revising for her exams. These guys have got to be caught. Please, call us here in the studio, or you can call the instant room where there are Kurdish speakers there, incidentally, and the number is 01253 293933.
I just want to tell you, so far we've had some very good information on the Sally Ann Bowman case. Of course, Sally Ann, the 18-year-old who was murdered in South Croydon, some very good information on that. We'll bring you more on that later on. First of all, DC Jackie Hames has some very nasty characters lined up on CCTV, don't you, Jackie?
Yeah.
Now, first of all, we're looking at a packed Wetherspoons pub in the Elephant and Castle in South London. Tell us what happened here.
Well, this is really, Fiona, the most bizarre attack. You can see circled here a man who comes in off the street, literally walks right through the bar of Wetherspoons, downstairs to where the toilets are. Got a backpack on his back, you probably saw it there. In fact, inside that is a 6-inch kitchen knife. He goes into the male toilets where he sees a man who's a French student, 23 years old, and he stabs him twice in the back. Once just missing his lung, and the other one just missing his kidney, or in fact stabbed his kidneys. The man then must be on adrenaline, just grapples with his attacker, and they manage to get back out onto the street. He takes the knife from his attacker. How he did this, goodness only knows. And but unfortunately, the man just gets away. So he's left with the knife collapsed in the street.
Now, this is the knife,
Yeah.
and it was a pretty packed pub, wasn't it? So someone must have seen this bloke with the rucksack in the pub, and this is the knife. This is actually the knife. So
Yeah.
if you can help us tonight, if you were there, if you saw anything with that.
He's quite a distinctive man as well. So think about the knife together with a man in his mid-20s, thin, slight tan, dark curly hair with distinctive thin sideburns, and he's possibly got crossed front teeth, so quite an unusual man.
Okay. Well, this NatWest Bank in Balham in South London has got a bit of a lesson for all of us, hasn't it?
It certainly has, yeah. We're looking at a very organised, sophisticated operation here. We've got a man at the front of the queue just taking out about £1,000 in cash. This man here in the glasses joins the queue until such time as our victim actually leaves the queue, which tends to suggest that he's following him. As you'll probably be able to see, hopefully here, there he goes, that's our victim. Our suspect then leaves the queue and is joined by 2 accomplices who follow him out onto the street, a few yards down the road, and into Sainsbury's where the victim is going off to do his shopping. Here we go, you can see them going into Sainsbury's here, just highlighted at the bottom of the screen. They then approach the victim, he brush him down, pretend he's got some sort of stain on his jacket, and pickpocket him of that £1,000 in cash. They're sort of probably all about our olive-skinned. We think they're possibly Middle Eastern, European, Mediterranean, but we're keeping an open mind on that.
Now, you've got another gang as well that you think are connected to that lot, haven't you?
Well, they're very possibly, again, because we think there's a possible Middle Eastern connection. You can see them here. There's 3 of them, and this time there's a woman involved. There was, say, 3 of them on this occasion, did exactly the same thing, followed the victim out of the bank into a shop, dusted them down, stole the money.
And again, it's supposed to take a large amount of cash. I have to say, banks and customers take note. If you or a customer is taking out a large amount of cash in a bank, try not to announce it to everyone else who's there.
90-year-old Elsie Hughes was a proud and independent lady who lived alone in Abermothy in North Wales for many years. Until a month ago, Thursday, September the 8th, she was battered to death in her home. As you can imagine, her family have been devastated by this. This is Elsie's granddaughter, Helen Hutchison, who knew your granny not just well from when you were a kid, but you lived quite close, so you saw a lot of her.
Yeah, I did.
Tell us about her.
She was just fantastic. She was just such a lovely lady. We were all so close. Everything that we did involved her. And she had such a hard life at the very beginning. She was widowed at an early age and had to bring up her 2 children on her own, and hold down 3 jobs. But, she'd never go on about it, never be bitter, And
she was in quite good health, really, I gather, too.
She was. As the years went on, her leg did give way, so she did become quite frail, which did stop her from being as mobile as she used to be, but it never stopped people going around to the house and visiting her. She had a fantastic network of friends and neighbours, and as I say, we would all go and see her as well.
Now, Rost, I feel for you, quite an emotional crime to have to investigate. At least in this, you've got a prime suspect.
We have, yes, Nick. We're very interested in a person seen outside the Kowloon takeaway restaurant round about the 7 o'clock mark on the evening in question. That individual is significant to us because he's very, very similar to a person who we understand from a witness was seen to leave Elsie's house at around about 8:30 p.m. in the night.
Now, tell us about him. Height?
This individual is about 5'10" to 6 feet tall. He's a white male. He's got dark hair. His hair is quite full and is worn in a fringe.
Accent?
Softly spoken is the way it's been described.
I mean, was
to
he a
us.
local, or did he obviously stick out as an outsider?
He didn't stick out as anybody from outside the area, but he wasn't particularly well known to the witnesses that we've traced so far.
Now, I gather there are also quite a number of people who were in the area who you haven't yet managed to speak to, and you're really, really anxious to find.
Yes, it's really important for us to trace a middle-aged couple that were in a people carrier, possibly a dark blue Ford Galaxy vehicle, outside the Kowloon restaurant. We understand from witness accounts that they may well have seen the male in the white hoodie as he left the Kowloon, may even have had a conversation with this particular individual. We haven't traced them, they haven't come forward. I'm really anxious to speak to them.
Anyone else?
There may be other people in the area that still haven't come forward. We've conducted house-to-house inquiries and road checks in the area. But again, a general appeal is for anybody else that was there that hasn't been spoken to by police, please come forward.
Well, for the sake of Helen and her whole family, please call us if you know anything. This was a horrendous thing to happen. If you know anything, give us a call here in the studio, 0500 600 600. Now, here's DC Rav Wilding.
Well, we've had an absolutely huge response on the Sally Ann Bauman murder case. Not only have we had one caller that actually thinks she knows the killer, we've had several women that have called in, have been victims of similar sexual assaults. And they actually, from what they've told us with the description of the suspect and the method used, it sounds very, very likely that it may well be the same guy. It's also worth mentioning, you may not be aware, but there's in fact a combined reward of £40,000 that's up for this. That's from the Met and a newspaper that's put that money forward. So if you know anything that could lead to the arrest and conviction of this guy, please do give us a call.
So good stuff coming in. Now, finally, you won't find one of these on the Antiques Roadshow, at least you shouldn't. This is an actual size photo blow-up of a church lectern taken from a village church at Matford in Northumbria. It was stolen along with 2 antique chests at the end of July.
And about 20 miles away, another lectern was taken from St Mungo's Church in Simonburn.
And that's a shame now, isn't it? Because the reason these local churches are locked up now is because, you know, people come along and nick stuff like that.
Yeah, you used to pray in churches, not prey on them. See if the antique dealers of Britain can tell us where those things are.
Now you can find details of all tonight's cases on our website, bbc.co.uk/crime. Our phone lines are open until midnight tonight, from 7:30 until midnight tomorrow.
And we're back after the news with Crimewatch Update. That's at 10:40. Please join us then next month's Crimewatch, Wednesday the 2nd of November. Den of Nightmares. Sleep well. Good night.
Good night.